Okay, so imagine this. You just got a raise, like a real raise. Not a cost of living bump, not a we appreciate you $500 bonus. I'm talking an actual, honest to goodness $15,000 salary increase. You're pumped. You tell your spouse. You maybe go out to dinner to celebrate. You start doing the math in your head. Okay, that's like 1,200 extra bucks a month. I can finally pay off that credit card. Maybe we take a real vacation this year. And then the first new paycheck hits and it's $740 more, maybe $780. And you sit there staring at your phone or your laptop or whatever. And you think, where did the rest of it go? Here's the thing. That money didn't disappear. It got taken quietly, automatically, in ways that nobody really sat down and explained to you. And the painful part, the part that keeps me up at night, is that this exact scenario plays out millions of times a year in this country. And most people just shrug and accept it as the price of doing okay in life, but it's not. And today we're going to talk about why. My name is Bihari, and I spend way too much time thinking about the invisible financial systems that are specifically designed to extract wealth from people who are doing everything right. If you're someone who earns a decent income, pays your taxes, saves a little, maybe has a 401k, you don't fully understand, but still feels like you're just running in place financially, like no matter how much you make it never quite feels like enough. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because today we are going after what I call the hidden tax on being middle class. And I don't mean a tax in the literal IRS sense, although the IRS is absolutely part of this conversation. I mean a collection of financial penalties, inefficiencies, and psychological traps that are uniquely, disproportionately devastating to people in the middle, not the wealthy, not people in poverty. Specifically, people who make just enough to be excluded from help, but not enough to access the tools that actually build wealth. Let's get into it. All right, so let's start with the most literal version of this hidden tax, because I think it's the most misunderstood financial concept in America, the marginal tax rate. Now, if I asked a random sample of middle-class Americans how tax brackets work, I'm going to estimate conservatively that about 60 to 70% of them believe that if you earn more money and cross into a higher bracket, all of your income gets taxed at the higher rate. That is not how it works. But here's what's fascinating, and this is where it gets really interesting. Even though that belief is technically wrong, it produces functionally real consequences. Because people make career and financial decisions based on this misconception all the time. Let me give you the actual math. In 2024, if you're a single filer, your first $11,600 in income is taxed at 10%. Income between $11,600 and $47,150 is taxed at 12%. Income between $47,150 and $100,525 is taxed at 22%. So if you make $55,000 a year, you're not paying 22% on $55,000. You're paying 10% on the first chunk, 12% on the middle chunk, and 22% only on the dollars between $47,150 and $55,000. Your effective tax rate, what you actually pay as a percentage of your total income, is closer to 14 or 15%. Okay, so what's the problem? The problem is the marginal rate, the 22, 24, 32% on each additional dollar you earn, and what it does combined with everything else that kicks in when you earn more. This is what I call the cliff effect, and it is one of the most financially brutal things about being middle class. Here's how it works. Let's say you and your spouse together earn $95,000 a year. You qualify for certain deductions. Your kids' daycare costs are partially offset by the Child and Dependent Care Credit. Maybe you get a small premium subsidy if you're on Marketplace health insurance. You're in a manageable tax bracket. Now you get that raise. Combined income goes to $115,000. Suddenly, multiple benefits start phasing out. Your eligibility for certain credits shrinks or disappears. If you have student loans on an income-driven repayment plan, your monthly payment just went up. If you were getting any kind of Marketplace insurance subsidy, that shrinks. You might now owe the AMT, the alternative minimum tax, on certain deductions that you were previously taking freely. And here's what most people don't realize. There are scenarios, real, documented, mathematically verifiable scenarios, where a household can receive a $20,000 raise and take home less money than they did before. after taxes, after benefit clawbacks, after the ripple effects through their financial life. That is not a glitch. That is a feature of a tax system that was built incrementally by different Congresses over 100 years with no single person ever stepping back and saying, wait, does all of this actually make sense together? And it falls hardest on the middle class, not the wealthy. They have accountants and structures and strategies, not people with very low income. There are explicit protections and supports. The people who get hit the hardest are the people making $80,000 to $200,000 who are just trying to get ahead. Now, let's talk about something a little more uncomfortable because this one involves us making choices. Look, I'm not here to judge, but I am here to show you the math because the math is pretty alarming. There's a concept I want to introduce called the convenience premium, and it is functionally a tax on not having time. Here's the thing about middle class income. You are almost always time poor. You're working a job, maybe two. You've got kids or aging parents or both. You're commuting. You're trying to maintain some version of a social life and your own sanity. You do not have 3 free hours on a Tuesday afternoon to comparison shop for car insurance or call your credit card company and negotiate a lower rate. And the entire consumer financial industry knows this. They have built enormous profitable businesses on it. Let's run some numbers. The average American family pays approximately $1,700 per year, more for auto insurance than they would if they switched to a competitor, according to research published by the Consumer Federation of America, not because their current insurer is necessarily the best fit, but because switching takes time, and time is what middle-class families don't have. The average credit card interest rate as of late 2024 was hovering around 21 to 22%. Per Federal Reserve data, the average American carries roughly $6,000 in credit card debt. That's about $1,300 a year in interest, fee for the average household. For families carrying $12,000 or $15,000 in revolving debt, which is not unusual at all, you're looking at $2,500 to $3,000 in annual interest payments. Now, here's where it connects to being middle class specifically. If you are lower income, you may have very few options anyway. Credit is harder to access. You may be unbanked or underbanked. The whole system is stacked against you in brutal ways. If you are genuinely wealthy, like top 5% wealthy, your entire relationship with money is different. You have a financial advisor or an accountant or a family office. Someone is optimizing your situation. Probably not perfectly, but someone is paying attention. The middle class, you're too expensive for most financial advisors to bother with on a fee basis and too financially sophisticated on paper to qualify for free assistance programs. You're in no man's land, and so you pay the convenience premium year after year after year. We're talking insurance inefficiencies, credit card interest, banking fees, not refinancing when rates drop, staying in a high expense ratio 401k fund when cheaper options exist. I've sat down and added this up for the average middle class family, and a conservative estimate is $4,000 to $8,000 per year in easily preventable financial waste. That's not a typo. That's $4,000 to $8,000. Or to put it another way, that's a fully funded Roth IRA contribution. Twice over, every single year. That's the difference between retiring at 62 or retiring at 58. That's a generational wealth transfer that you're currently handing to corporations instead of passing to your kids. Okay, now we need to talk about the psychological piece because the hidden tax isn't only external. Part of it is internal, and this is the part that's hardest to hear. There is a specific documented psychological phenomenon that hits middle-class earners harder than any other income group, and it has to do with identity spending. Here's the setup. When you're lower income, your spending is mostly driven by necessity. You're not choosing between a $30,000 car and a $50,000 car, and you're figuring out if the $8,000 car will make it another year. When you're very wealthy, you're also somewhat insulated from this, not because rich people don't overspend, they absolutely do, but because the margin for error is so large that lifestyle spending doesn't structurally undermine your wealth building in the same way. But in the middle, in that $75,000 to $180,000 household income range, something very specific happens psychologically. You can see the next level. You live near it. Your coworkers are at it. Your social media feed is full of it. And your income is just high enough that you can access, on credit, the visible markers of the level above you. And this is where it gets really interesting. Researchers at the University of Chicago and Columbia Business School have independently found that income inequality in a neighborhood directly predicts higher debt loads for middle-income families in that neighborhood. When you can see wealthier people around you, you spend more. Not because you're foolish, because you're human. This is a deeply hardwired social behavior. Now, the financial industry does not fight this instinct. They monetize it. The 84-month car loan, the home equity line of credit for a kitchen renovation, the no interest for 12 months furniture financing. Every single one of these products exists primarily because middle-class Americans have predictable, reliable income, which makes them creditworthy, and aspirational spending pressure, which makes them willing to borrow. Let me show you what this costs. The average new car payment in America right now is around $735 per month, based on Experian's State of the Automotive Finance Market report. The average loan term is getting close to 69 months. That means millions of Americans are committing $735 a month, nearly $9,000 a year, to a depreciating asset for almost 6 years, often on a vehicle worth $40,000 to $55,000. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but people need cars, Bihari. What's the alternative? Fair, but here's the thing. The need for a car and the choice to finance a $52,000 SUV for 72 months are two completely separate decisions, and there's a $400 per month difference between those two decisions. Over 6 years, that's $28,800. Invested in an index fund at a conservative 8% return, that becomes roughly $38,000. That's a year of college tuition. That's a significant down payment on a rental property. That's the kind of money that actually changes your family's financial trajectory. And the reason it doesn't happen isn't stupidity. It's because nobody ever laid out the trade-off that clearly in a setting where you could really absorb it before you were sitting in a dealership on a Saturday with a salesperson who has been trained for years to close people exactly like you. All right, let's zoom out now because I want to show you the big picture of what all of this adds up to. The actual hidden tax on being middle class isn't any single one of these things. It's a compounding effect of all of them. Over time, compared to what happens for the wealthy, here's what most people don't realize about how wealth actually builds at the top. Wealthy Americans, and I'm talking top 10%, but especially top 1%, do not primarily build wealth through income. According to the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, the wealthiest Americans hold the majority of their wealth in equity, business ownership, stocks, real estate. These assets do something that wages fundamentally cannot do. They appreciate while you sleep. A household earning $120,000 per year, paying taxes, spending on lifestyle, saving 10% in a 401k is in a completely different wealth building structure than a household with $800,000 in index funds and a rental property, even if both households have the same current income. The first household is selling time for money, 1 hour at a time, subject to every tax and penalty and convenience premium we've already talked about. The second household has money working for them. And crucially, capital gains, the returns on an invested asset, are taxed at a lower rate than ordinary income. Long-term capital gains rates are 0%, 15%, or 20%, depending on your income. If you're making $120,000 in wages, you're paying 22% marginal on every dollar above $47,000. If you're a wealthy person making $120,000 in long-term capital gains, your federal tax rate might be 15% lower than a middle-class wage earner. I want to be very clear. I'm not making a political argument here. I'm not saying the tax code is fair or unfair. I'm saying this is the system and you need to understand it because understanding it is how you stop being on the losing side of it. The middle class pays the most inefficient form of tax, high marginal rates on labor income, while the wealthy increasingly earned income informs tax at preferential rates. And the gap compounds every year for decades. A 35-year-old who redirects $6,000 annually, that's $500 a month, totally achievable if we eliminate the convenience premium waste we talked about, into a Roth IRA invested in a low-cost total market index fund and leaves it alone until 65. ends up with approximately $734,000 in tax-free money, assuming an 8% average annual return. The same $500 a month in a savings account at 2% interest, about $246,000. After 30 years, that $488,000 difference, that's the cost of not knowing. That's the compound tax on financial illiteracy and inaction. Okay, so I've just spent about 10 minutes explaining why the system is stacked against you, and I can feel some of you starting to spiral into helplessness. So let's stop that right now. Because here's the deal. You cannot fix the tax code. You cannot eliminate lifestyle inflation from human psychology. You cannot make the financial industry suddenly start acting in your interests. But you absolutely, 100% can make 3 specific moves that will structurally change your financial position, and you can start this week. Not next month. Not after you pay off the credit card. This week. Move 1. Attack the convenience premium directly. I want you to pick one thing from this list and spend 90 minutes on it this weekend. Call your auto insurer and get a competing quote from at least 2 other companies. Tell your current insurer you have a lower quote. They will almost always match it or come close. Average savings, $400 to $700 per year. Log into your 401k and look at the expense ratios on your investment fund. If any fund has an expense ratio above 0.5%, move that money into a low-cost index fund. Most plans offer one. This takes 20 minutes and could be worth tens of thousands of dollars over your working life. Call your credit card company and ask for a lower interest rate. Just ask. Studies show that about 70% of people who ask get at least a small reduction. If you carry a balance, every percentage point matters. You don't do all 3, you do 1 this week, then the next one next month. Small, systematic erosion of the convenience premium. Move 2, shift how you think about raises. The next time you get a raise, or the next time you're negotiating one, do not think about it as monthly take-home dollars. Think about it as investable surplus. Before lifestyle inflation can absorb that raise, before your brain has time to find things to spend it on, automate a portion of it into an investment account. Doesn't matter if it's your 401k, a Roth IRA, or a plain brokerage account. The specific account is less important than the action of moving money away from your checking account before you can spend it. This is a strategy that wealthy people use almost universally. They pay themselves first in investments automatically. The lifestyle is built around what's left, not the other way around. Move 3. Get asset exposure even if it's small. I'm not telling you to become a real estate investor or start picking stocks. But here's the reality. If your entire net worth is in your home equity and your 401k, you are dependent on 2 specific assets. And one of them you live in, which means it's not really a liquid wealth building tool. The simplest version of this move, open a brokerage account with a company like Fidelity or Schwab. Both have no minimum balance, no fees, and set up an automatic monthly contribution of even $100 into a total market index fund. ETF, not a mutual fund with a load. Something like VTI or FSKAX. That's it. You are now an investor. Your money is now working while you sleep. You are now building exposure to the same compounding growth engine that the wealthy have been using for generations. $100 a month isn't going to make you a millionaire quickly, but it will make you a millionaire. And more importantly, it shifts your psychology. Once you see your investments growing, once you check that account and see $1,200 become $1,400, become $1,900, you will find ways to put more in because it's real, it's visible, it's yours. Look, here's the thing I want to leave you with. The hidden tax on being middle class isn't a conspiracy. Nobody sat in a room and designed a system specifically to trap you. It emerged over decades through 1,000 small decisions made by legislators, corporations, and yes, sometimes by us. But understanding it changes everything. The moment you understand that marginal tax rates interact with benefit clawbacks to create financial cliffs, you can plan around them. The moment you understand that the convenience premium is costing your family $4,000 to $8,000 a year, you start treating those 90 minutes of financial maintenance as the high-value work it actually is. The moment you understand that capital grows differently than wages, and that you have access to the same tools just in smaller amounts, you stop waiting to be rich before you start investing like one. The middle class is not trapped by income. The middle class is trapped by information asymmetry, by the gap between what the wealthy know and do and what the rest of us were never really taught. That's what this channel exists to close. If this video helped you see your financial situation differently, even one piece of it, you please share it with someone who needs to hear it. The subscribe button is right there, and drop a comment below telling me, which of the 3 moves are you starting with this week? I read every comment and I want to know. I'll see you in the next one.